Well, first of all, thank you to Bentley. She poured her heart into it, and I know Christian Goey did too. That was a hell of a piece. Let me begin with opening credits. First, I want to pay tribute to the Hall of Famers tonight. I'm honored to be here tonight with Darryl Wenhart, Dina Sheldon, Manolo Romero, Terry Adams, the one and only Terry Bradshaw, and friends Drew Esikoff, Roger Goodell, and of course, my buddy Joe Buck. I'll be in that cast anytime, anywhere. The executive producers of Ross Greenburg are Michelle Greenburg, who debunked the outdated saying, behind every man there's a good woman. She was right there beside me from November 28th, 1983 through tonight. And since I put her in first position of the credits, we should have many years ahead. She was my guiding light and sent me on the right path, sorry, Michelle, through my entire career. Other executive producers are my loving parents, Janice and Bobby, who offered their humanity as a guide to treating people and an understanding of the world around them. I also tribute my brother Michael, who had a heart of gold and taught me equal rights in this world we live in. The other co-producers are our twins, Brad and Rachel, or Rachel and Brad. No one gets first position. They'll be upset. There were many times I drew on their moments in sports and life to recognize that Rachel's soccer play as an early Title IXer and her faithful viewership of television shows like Real World. You never knew Rachel really created Hard Knocks, did you? Or Brad's love affair with the Yankees made them both very, very much a part of the influential saga that is HBO programming. Love you both very much and very proud of what you've become. And most of all, thanks for adding Matt and Julia, and of course the grandkids, Mia and Dylan. Credits now over. Now the story. I was fortunate enough to become best friends with Kyle Gifford, who I played football with through high school. His father happened to be Frank Gifford. So at 7 years old, I started my career. Post-Brown, after my head cleared from that table back there, my Brown buddies, I went off to ABC Sports, and as you saw, I did not get a staff job, but I learned how to really tell stories from the great Roone Arledge, Chet Forty, Denny Lewin, Chuck Howard, and the production of sports television, which was really begun right there. Non-staff freelance. It's where I learned the up-close and personal journalistic style of storytelling and what it was like to yell and curse in the truck. But I couldn't get a staff job, so my brother Michael said, don't quit. I went to a local library and I looked up a cable source book and I found this company called HBO. I wrote a letter. It went to Austin first, who passed it down to Michael Fuchs, who then passed it down to Tim Brain, who was running this production department, and he was the only person there. So he hired me, and the two of us started. Luckily, I'd known Marty Glickman, who was standing in Tim's office, so he probably convinced him to give me the job. So Tim spent the next 4 or 5 years trying to calm me down because I was so hot-headed. Michelle did that too. And we proceeded to get deep into boxing at Michael's direction. We started to ask around, and I found a director to help out on Inside the NFL and introduced him to boxing with a Marvin Hagler fight in January of 1981. That happened to be one of the most brilliant directors in sports television history, Mark Payton. We hit boxing at the right time. Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns, Roberto Duran, Larry Holmes, Michael Spinks, Alexis Arguello, and ultimately that kid from the Catskills via Brownsville that seemed to go by his last name, Tyson. They were spectacular, and we dug in and introduced their stories to the country. And we did it with producers like Rick Bernstein, Dave Harmon, and through the years, John Crystal and Thomas Odelfelt. We started looking for a broadcast team to match the power of what was going on in the ring. First, Barry Tompkins, then one of the best that ever was, Jim Lampley. First, Sugar Ray Leonard, and then George Foreman. And always the one and only Larry Merchant, our Howard Cosell, all friends for life. While all of that was going on, we were doing Wimbledon every year. Can you imagine sitting in a production meeting every morning for 2 hours, listening to Billie Jean King and Arthur Ashe? Sure, we'd talk about McEnroe, Borg, Everett, Navratilova, Sampras, and others, but we were there to listen to Arthur and Billie Jean wax poetic about world affairs and then discuss their many passionate battles for civil rights in the country every day at Wimbledon, and that was beyond description. In the 80s, we were starting to do documentaries, but in 1990, When It Was a Game came along, George Roy and I started to craft a new way to present sports documentaries. His unique talent as a filmmaker was the beginning of a beautiful relationship. Rick Bernstein and I set out to find the very best filmmakers in sports television and brought them to HBO. Joe Levine, Ezra Edelman, Margaret Grassi, and of course, Steve Sable and Kenny Rogers from NFL Films. The music of Ferdinand J. Smith, Brian Keene, and when I left HBO, John Sands. The camera work of the legendary Pete Francella and his protégés John Tipton and the extraordinary Steve LeMay. Then there was the creation of Real Sports, and thanks to talented producers like Joe Persky and Nick Dolan, it is still on the air. 24/7, led by the multi-talented and gifted Bentley Weiner. Hard Knocks, Costas, what grand memories. And then, after 33 years, I was gone. You know that expression, in tough times you'll know who your friends are. I'll give you some names. Adam Silver, Mark Lazarus, John Collins, Gary Bettman, Sean McManus, Howard Katz, Sandy Montag, who remains a dear friend, Mark Greenburg, no relation, by the way, Matt Blank, Stephen Espinoza, Nina Rosenstein. A new career, Willie Loman on the playing field. I'm 11 years in, and somehow still crying at rough cut screenings and still excited to work with some of the best filmmakers on the planet. A year and a half ago, I reached out to my old friend Sam Pollard, an amazing talent, and hired him to direct, cut to commercial, the upcoming Bill Russell documentary on Netflix on February 8th. You see, it's all about finding and then surrounding yourself with the best talent and the people you enjoy working with. It's not about me. All of the producers, directors, writers like the great Aaron Cohen, the narrators like Liev Schreiber and Jeffrey Wright, cinematographers, editors like Matt O'Connor, these are all the Hall of Famers. But I think what I'll remember most from this career in sports and television and film are the memorable moments that no one can ever take away from any of us. Tyson going down in Tokyo and Mark Payton's shot of Mike reaching for his mouthpiece. Walking around the outfield of Tiger Stadium as we wrapped shooting 61 and Billy Crystal and me smoking cigars, one of the only two I've ever smoked in my life, reminiscing about the once-in-a-lifetime experience of recreating our childhood. That feeling of being at center court at Wimbledon in the early 80s, the sound of the crowd and the majesty of that historic stadium. Attending the premiere of Miracle in L.A. with Michelle, and after the credits, seeing the curtain rise and all 20 members of the 80 hockey team wearing their jerseys, while getting a 5-minute standing ovation. Sitting in rough cut sessions of our first 24/7 and our first Real Sports episodes, when we knew we were on our way to do something unique and special. Spending the day with Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus at Oakmont, with one moment in particular sticking out. We're shooting on the 10th tee, and a twosome of two women who were in a tournament on their way to playing the 10th hole. I told Jack and Arnold to stay on the bench and watch as these two women teed off. It was a moment I'll never forget, and how about for them? Most of all, I'll always remember getting some of the greatest minds in the history of this medium to deliver their brain power on camera. The greatest all-around announcer in the history of sports television, Bob Costas, the historic duo and signature team of Inside the NFL, Len Dawson and Nick Bonacani, God bless you both. Their co-host later, who I called the day after his retirement from football, Chris Collinsworth. Everyone's favorite person, a real sports correspondent and host of many of our biggest fights, James Brown. The first woman to call play-by-play of a men's match at Wimbledon, who, God bless you, flew up from Florida, the great Mary Carrillo. Bryant Gumbel, Frank DeFord, Bernie Goldberg, Jimmy Johnson, and so many more. Hell, at one time or another, I worked with Al Michaels, Marv Albert, Kurt Gowdy, Don Dunphy, Marty Glickman, Jack Whitaker, Jim McKay, and John Madden. Are you kidding me? We're talking about some pretty serious memories for you and me. In the end, though, we are all incredibly lucky to be in the form of entertainment that we all love, with friendships and people that are so incredibly talented. The people being honored tonight, and many of the people in this room, have given the American and worldwide audiences many, many memories of moments in sports history that will last a lifetime. You're incredibly gifted at your craft, and the sights and sounds of your work have hopefully been digitally preserved forever. I keep telling people that I've worked with that congratulate me for this honor, that I'm only getting inducted into this Hall of Fame because of all of you. So I accept this honor on your behalf, and I thank each and every one of you. Fade to black. Thanks very much.